So I've put off making this video for a while because it's just not something I'm really passionate about. I honestly have never even really thought like once actively as to why I made the decision to not drink. It's kind of like if somebody was to ask me why I haven't made a video on stamp collecting. It's just because I don't collect stamps. It's not really something I'm interested in. But my girlfriend told me that I should make a video on it because maybe there's somebody out there who needs to hear some of this stuff, and I figured that was kind of enough of a reason for me to turn on the camera. So I've never had any alcohol. I've never had like a sip. I've never tried anything. I guess for the record, I've also never done like any drugs. I've never had weed or CBD or like hard drugs. I don't know if that needs to be said. And some people that I meet kind of gasp when I say that, which like, I don't know, I guess is kind of to be expected to some degree. But for the record, I think that trying new things is actually very important to personal growth, especially things that are going to get you outside your comfort zone. That being said, I don't necessarily think that applies to everything. I don't think that you should be jumping off a cliff to see if you like the sensation of free fall. And no, I'm not saying that jumping off a cliff is the same as wanting to drink. It's a metaphor. Fool, or at least I think it is. No animus by this at all, but what I'm trying to say is that of all the new things that I've done in my life, it just seems like trying drinking didn't really offer any returns, or at least no obvious ones, as opposed to trying a new workout regimen, or a new sleep schedule, or trying a new community service or something. I do have one habit though that blatantly contradicts all of what I just said, and that is coffee. I didn't always like coffee, but now I'm a huge coffee snob and I really enjoy it, even though there are only downsides. Downsides, at least the way that I kind of loosely defined it a second ago. There's no health benefits, there's no mental benefits, there's no societal benefits, and on top of all that, it costs money. So I think it's a decent parallel. Although, yes, your ability to drive isn't inhibited by drinking coffee, and your ability to function the next morning is not really inhibited that much by drinking coffee. But this example really is just going to show that I don't really think about why I don't drink, because I still have coffee, which is something that, to me, shares some qualities of drinking. Something that has planted me in my decision, you could say, is that alcoholism actually runs in my family. I've unfortunately lost a lot of family members to alcoholism. To be fair, nowadays, my family handles their alcohol pretty responsibly. Thank goodness nobody is sick, and right now, there are no bad influences around me. I would say, if anything, it's never that I was really turned off by the idea of drinking. It's more just that I was never turned on to it. My friend group doesn't really drink either. I've never once felt like I was in a situation where I needed something to alleviate my social anxiety around them. To be fair, my friend group is kind of outside the bell curve. Like, I think I'm in the minority with the friend group that I was lucky enough to get. For fun, we would just write songs together or go to the park or something stupid. I wouldn't really say that I blame people all that much for using alcohol as a social crutch though. I still use my phone sometimes to get out of awkward situations in a social setting, but I definitely don't use my phone because I'm trying to fix my inability to talk to people sober. I don't think I ever want to have to rely on something to coax me into this sense of confidence or being extroverted. It is a little saddening when I play shows, for example, and I have those interactions with fans where they've had one too many and they say some things that they wouldn't normally have said if they weren't under the influence. One, because I just wish that they had a good support system so that when they were sober, they could address some of these things that they're telling me that they probably shouldn't be telling me. But two, because a lot of the really good interactions I have with fans wouldn't have even happened if alcohol wasn't a catalyst. And it just makes me sad because I wish it would have just happened anyway. I'll never forget the time that I played this show and this fan came up to me after the show and asked if I wanted to go get drunk with their friend. And I was like, well, no, I don't drink. Firstly, they just didn't believe me, which, I mean, fair enough. Most 22-year-olds do. I didn't really think much of it though, and I was kind of asked and asked and asked over the next 20 minutes, and they had had a few during that time, but eventually they left. Fast forward to when I get home from the show, and I realized that one of them had actually left me a note saying that they were a little scared to be so forward at the time, that they really just wanted to be my friend. So we still maintain a friendship over social media to this day, but every time I see their name come up in my feed, I just can't help but think, would I even be friends with them if they hadn't had a lot to drink that night to get the confidence to come up and just say hi? I mean, I could be absolutely reading into things a little bit too much, but something that I think about. I would say that beyond playing shows, most social events that I attend don't really center around drinking anyway. Sporting events, car shows, birthday parties for my friends, which they already don't really drink. So I guess that my lifestyle just doesn't really lend itself to drinking. One thing I can say that has actively crossed my mind is situations where that is the focal point, or at least it's to be expected that there's going to be alcohol there. For example, if you're hosting a party, it's usually kind of like the centerpiece of what your obligations are to throw that party, is to supply the alcohol. I've even been to family functions on my girlfriend's side of the family where the entire event is just centered around drinking. Even just going out to a restaurant and getting a meal, usually past like 6 o'clock, it's kind of expected that you're going to be getting drinks, or sometimes even in the morning at breakfast, at least in America. I thought about this when a couple of my close friends got back from Taiwan, and I've never personally visited, but they told me that there's not really much mention of alcohol there. The thinking is that a less drinking-centered culture can maintain a more responsible society. Less noise pollution, less crime, less family dysfunction, just generally less problems. Yes, these are just a few select anecdotes from a few select people, and it is in no way representative of all of Taiwanese culture or anything. But regardless of where it exists, I do kind of think that there's a line to be drawn between alcohol indulgence and a more disrupted society. I think just with it becoming so much more normative and accessible, it just happens. And there's some science to support also why drinking might not be the best for you. And before I rattle this off, I just want to reiterate that really what I'm about to say didn't have much of a personal influence on me. I honestly learned most of this stuff when I was making this video, but for anybody out there who's maybe a little bit more empirically kind of based, this might help you out a little bit if you're considering cutting out alcohol. The New York Times was recently quoted saying that research published in November revealed that between 2015 and 2019, excessive alcohol use resulted in nearly 140,000 deaths per year in the United States. About 40% of those deaths had acute causes, like car crashes, poisonings, and homicides. But the majority were caused by chronic conditions attributed to alcohol, such as liver disease, cancer, and heart disease. They go on to say that scientists think that the main way alcohol causes health problems is by damaging your DNA. When you drink alcohol, your body metabolizes it into acetaldehyde, a chemical that's toxic to cells. Acetaldehyde both damages your DNA and prevents your body from repairing the damage, Dr. Marissa B. Esser explained. Once your DNA is damaged, then a cell can grow out of control and create a cancer tumor. This article from Master Center says that, quote, alcohol-dependent patients were studied and scanned within 24 hours of detoxification and abstinence. Tissue volume was observed to be smaller in alcohol-dependent patients than in non-alcohol-dependent patients. This shows that alcohol use makes gray matter in the brain shrink over time. The brain is about 40% gray matter. This is the part of the brain that is essential for attention, memory, and thought. It contains neurons that also deal with motor control and coordination, which explains why long-term alcohol abuse is characterized by loss of memory and attention deficits. Studies in college-age young adults show that heavy alcohol use results in accelerated gray matter volume. It is a common misconception that drinking excessively kills brain cells. This is not true. However, excessive drinking does damage neurons, which can make it difficult for them to relay messages to one another. This is why brain matter is so essential for functioning. This tissue contains these precious neurons that need to relay important messages. Just because it doesn't kill brain cells doesn't mean that it's any less damaging to the brain. I also know personally from experience that people who are affected by ADHD have a greater proclivity towards alcoholism. So you might want to consider that if you're living with ADHD, you're already a little bit more disaffected than others. So that was a lot of words and science and shit, but ultimately I don't really care about drinking or not drinking. I'm lucky enough that pretty much everybody in my life has ever tried to make me feel less than for my decision. And thankfully, I've also never inside felt less than for my decision. I've also never felt better than or superior to anybody. I don't know if that needs to be said, but I've never felt that way either. If I think for too long, I do kind of start to question why we really keep alcohol around, because even I, a sinful coffee drinker, don't really see the benefits to it. But generally, I don't really care. And that's kind of who I want this video to be for, because I think that there's a lot of really amazing YouTube videos out there done by some really talented creators who talk very passionately as to why they don't like drinking. But there's gotta be at least like one person out there who doesn't drink a lot or maybe never has, and they're still feeling a little uncomfortable with it because they don't want to be overly passionate about it. So whoever that person is, I kind of just hope this video finds an audience of people that don't want to make being like straight edge their whole personality or feel like they have something to prove, but rather just for people who don't really care. People who are fine with not drinking and not drinking while also not standing on a soapbox of any kind. This video is basically just for anybody who finds more enjoyment flinging their shoe into a really tall tree or hitting a tennis ball against a garage door. If you have anything to add to the conversation, please comment it down below. It always generates a really interesting dialogue. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment any future videos that you want to see in the comments. Thank you so much for watching.